Hi dear students, in the prelims examination paper 2 CSAT paper, you know, content based questions are there, reasoning questions are there, comprehension questions are there. Coming to comprehension, 25 to 30 questions would be from this comprehension side. So it is one of the major part of your CSAT paper in prelims examination. And in this session, we will solve some previous year's questions, and we will also learn how to eliminate other choices to find out the most accurate one. Okay. Before that, let me tell you certain common rules regarding this reading comprehension or this passage part. It is always nice to go for this bottom up strategy. Bottom up strategy is nothing but yes, you read the questions and choices first. Questions and choices first. We know that in this reading comprehension part, the question would be always like this. A passage is given, that passage is followed by a question. Question is like a, yes, it is multiple choice question. Multiple choice type questions. Okay, multiple choices, 4 choices are given, and based on your reading and understanding of this passage, you have to pick the exact accurate choice out of the given choices. This is the usual format. So in this situation, I would say it is always nice to follow bottom up strategy. Bottom up strategy is we read the questions and the choices first, so that we will get an idea how to focus in the passage. Okay, so we will skim the passage. We will remove all the unwanted areas from the passage. Our focus of reading or our purpose of reading the passage is, only to answer this question. So we read the passage keeping these question and choices in the mind. Okay, so it is nice. It is always nice to read the question, read the choices first before reading the passage, so that when you go to passage, you will always get an idea what to focus in the passage as per the question demand. Okay, so that is always nice coming to passage. That will save your time. Second is, I would say it is always nice to understand the crux of the passage, because UPSC, they ask, sometimes they ask assumption, sometimes they ask inference, sometimes they ask what is the crux of the passage, sometimes corollary idea, sometimes they ask the opinion, sometimes they ask, what would be next. This way they ask in the passages. So it is always nice to understand the central idea, the what is called the main gist of the passage. Try to understand what is the central idea of the passage, what the entire passage is talking about. Many case studies are there, examples are there, evidences are there, many factual informations are there. All those things are given to substantiate a single idea, maybe, mostly. Okay. So always nice to understand what is the central idea of the passage. If you understood the central idea of the passage, answering many of the questions would be easy. Okay. Even though the demands vary, that I will tell you what each of them demand, that I will tell you. Then UPSC always fool you. This also you keep in the mind. UPSC, when they give you the questions or the choices, the basic purpose of UPSC is to trick you, to trap you, to fool you. Okay, you may feel that almost all the choices are, right choices. But the biggest challenge is, you have to eliminate one by one until you reach the accurate one. Okay. So here UPSC always try to fool the aspirants by giving very tricky choices. The question is not difficult, the passage is not difficult, but the choices are very trickiest one. That is the biggest game of this comprehension part. Okay. So please take care that this has to be in the mind. Yes, UPSC gives you the choices, that is, that is to fool you, that is to trap you. So eliminate one by one until you reach the most accurate one. Then the question and choices. Give always the priority to question and choices rather than the passage. The passage size, smaller, bigger, or maybe, descriptive passages, hypothetical passages, what all the passages, doesn't matter. The question and answers or question and choices, read it. read the question and choices, come to the passage. If you are not able to understand the central idea of the passage, just leave the passage and question here. Okay. It is not wise to stick on to that passage which is very difficult for you to understand the meaning or understand the central idea. Still you are trying to answer questions. That is a foolish idea because negative marks is there. So focus on question and choices and read the passage, and if you understood the meaning of the passage, if you are able to answer the question, then you do. Otherwise you skip the passage, skip the question. Now elimination, this is the game changer here. Coming to comprehension, in many of my classes and videos I told you that yes, coming to reading comprehension part or in this CSAT passage part, your ultimate strategy has to be eliminating the wrong choices and reaching out to the most accurate one. Eliminate the wrong choices and come up with the most accurate one. So elimination, there are various like criteria for elimination or criterion for elimination that I already discussed in many of other videos. So here also, eliminate, you have to eliminate the choices. Sometimes the choices are contradictory, sometimes the choices are too extreme, sometimes the choices are too absurd, sometimes the choices are out of the context, sometimes the choices are like too generic, too specific. On various occasions we eliminate this type of the choices. Okay, so elimination matters. Then mind the keywords. The keywords given in the passage, keyword given in the choices, keyword given in the questions, everything matters. So take care of that thing also and skip the slip. Skip the slip means that is nothing but I would say that whichever is slippery for you, whichever the passage, whichever the questions is slippery for you, just skip it here. That is also a brightest idea of scoring well in the CSAT. Okay. So these things you keep in the mind, and let us go to the first passage. This is passage I taken from 2021. Okay, the passage goes like this. Let's read it out. Policymakers and media have placed the blame for skyrocketing food prices on a variety of factors, including high fuel prices, bad weather in key food producing countries, and the diversion of land to non-food production. Increased emphasis, however, has been placed on a surge in demand for food from the most populous emerging economies. It seems highly probable, here I read the passage first, okay. It seems highly probable that mass consumption in these countries could be well poised to create a food crisis. This is the passage. Now the question is like this. With the reference to the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Following assumptions have been made. Oil producing countries are one of the reasons for high food prices. If there is a food crisis in the world in the near future, it will be in the emerging economies. Two statements are given. Now what would be the advantage of reading these question and choices first? Things will be much easier for me to relate in the passage or connect in the passage, and thereby I can skim the unwanted things and I can pick the most wanted things. Okay. Now here, anyway, just read the question. Which of the following assumptions have been made? So the question is asking for an assumption. Now here it is very important to understand what is the difference between inference and assumption, or what is the difference between assumption and conclusion, or what is the difference between assumption and implication, or what is the difference between assumption and corollary idea or crux idea. Okay. Assumption is nothing but, please try to understand, I would say assumption is new information. Assumption is always, it is not what is already given in the passage, it is new information, it is new piece of information. Okay. It is not logically deduced from any given information, but inference is always logically deduced from, it is logically deduced from what is given in the passage using reasoning. For inference you have to use reasoning. Okay. Inference is something what we implicitly taken out of what is explicitly mentioned. Okay. Now the fact is, for inference, to keep in the mind, inference is a logical deduction from the piece of information given in the passage. From the piece of information given in the passage. Okay. That is a logical conclusion, or inference is something which logically deduced from the passage, deduced from the piece of information given in the passage. Okay. But assumption means, assumption is new piece of information. It is not deduced from, it is not taken from what is directly given there. Okay, then another idea you try to understand, inference must be true if the given information is true. If the given information is true, then inference must be true. If the given information is true, you have to draw an inference that has to be absolutely truthful to that particular given information. But coming to assumption, assumption must be true for the conclusion given information to be true. Assumption must be true for the conclusion. Assumption must be true for the conclusion. Assumption is something what we assume to be true. Okay, that should be true for the conclusion, or that should be true for given information to be true. That means both are in the opposite direction, both move in the opposite direction. So please try to understand the basic difference between assumption and inference. Now assume means to accept something as true without proof. There is no proof, there is no evidence, there is no, like, we can't apply that particular kind of reasoning. But this is to be true like this, then only the conclusion can be true like this. Okay. Crux is the most important point of an issue, the central idea of an issue. Conclude is to arrive at an end. Okay. Then see, implication is to draw conclusion from something although it is not explicitly stated. That is what is implied. Implication, that is to draw a conclusion from something although it is not explicitly mentioned, it is not directly mentioned. Imply is indicating, pointing towards something that is not explicitly stated. So this is important to understand the meaning of these keywords, so that things will be much easier for you in the final UPSC examination. So coming to this assumption, again I am telling you, assumption is something, a new piece of information that you keep in the mind. This keyword you keep in the mind. Assumption is always a new piece of information. It is always a new piece of information. It is not logically deduced from the given piece of information. It is not logically deduced from the given piece of information. What is logically deduced from the given piece of information? That is inference. Assumption is always a new piece of information. Inference must be true if the given information is true, but assumption must be true for the conclusion. Take care, that is the difference. Now coming to this, they are asking for assumption being made out of this passage. See, the first one is oil producing countries are one of the reasons for high food prices. The biggest problem with the aspirants is, they think too much while solving the passages. That is the biggest headache. Don't think too much. There is no need for too much reading in between lines here, no need for that. Here is simply you understand what they say. Oil producing countries are one of the reasons for high food prices. But in the passage what they said, policymakers, media have placed blame for skyrocketing food prices on variety of factors including high fuel prices, bad weather in key food producing countries and the diversion of land to non-food production. Increased emphasis being placed on surge in demand for food from these most populous emerging economies. So they say oil producing countries are one of the reasons for high food prices, but what they said is like high fuel prices are leading to increasing food prices. Now here what they said is, it is something which is talking about the consumption. Okay, massive consumption of such countries. Massive consumption of such countries. It is not such countries, these what is called oil producing countries are reasons for high food prices. Okay, that cannot be assumed from the passage. What they said is like a surge in demand for food from the most populous emerging countries. It seems highly probable that mass consumption in these countries could well poised to create a food crisis. So food crisis, or maybe this reason for high food prices, that is something which is attributed to this massive scale consumption in such countries. It is not directly such countries responsible for this hike in the food prices. If there is no food crisis in the world in the near future, if there is a food crisis in the world in the near future, it will be in the emerging countries. That is also a wrong idea. That is something can be an inference, but the question is asking for assumption. So here the fact is, emerging economies' tendency of mass consumption, that is something which is responsible for the food prices. And what they say is like food crisis in the world in the near future, it will be in the emerging economies. It will be in the emerging economies. But the problem is, we are not asked to draw the inference, we are asked to draw the assumption only. Assumption, I always said that assumption is not a logical deduction based on reasoning. Assumption is always, it's something we assume to be true. It is out of this given ideas, we draw a new information. Based on that information, the coming conclusion can be true like that. Okay. So the fact is, like they say, oil producing countries are one of the reasons for high food prices. It is not about these oil producing countries, I mean, directly responsible for these high food prices. Such an idea is not conveyed in the passage. Second thing is, the food crisis in the country in the near future, it will be in the emerging economies. So that is also cannot be taken as a true statement, or it cannot be drawn as an assumption. Okay, if the inference is asked, somewhat it is more relatable, but coming to assumption, we can't take it from this given piece of information as an assumption. Okay, so the fact is, in the passage itself, they said that yes, high fuel prices leading to these increasing food prices, and it is not countries. And also, emerging economies' tendency of mass consumption is leading to such a scenario. Okay, it is not such countries. Okay, so based on this information, we can just come to the conclusion that yes, none of them is taken as a good assumption. Okay, none of them can be drawn as a good assumption. So your answer has to be Delhi. That is neither one nor two. Moving on to next passage, this was asked in 2017. An innovative India will be inclusive. So before reading the passage, just to read the question here. Which among the following is the most logical, rational assumption that can be made from the above passage? Here also they are asking for an assumption, a new piece of information based on this. Okay, and with that piece of information, we will come to a true conclusion. Okay, now see. Innovation and R&D is the only way to reduce rural and urban migration. Every rapidly growing country needs to minimize the divergence between productivity in the agriculture and other sectors. Inclusive innovation and R&D can help create an egalitarian society. Rapid urbanization takes place only when a country's economic growth is rapid. Now the problem is, I feel something fishy with the two statements here. Innovation and R&D is the only way to reduce rural and urban migration. They used a term which is only. This is only they used here, only. I am confused with that. Then the last one also. Yes, last one they say, what they say? Rapid urbanization takes place only when a country's economic growth is rapid. There is an extreme word is only is there. So I suspect both these words, both these choices. Okay. Now what is left with me is B and C. Before that, I have to read the passage. I have to understand the central idea. Yes, innovative India will be inclusive as well as technologically advanced, improving the lives of all Indians. Innovation and R&D can mitigate increase in social inequality and relieve the pressures created by rapid urbanization and the growing divergence in the productivity between agriculture and knowledge. Intensive manufacturing and services threatens to increase income inequality. By encouraging India's, yes, just go for it, just read it along with me, you can just read it. Fine. I hope you read the passage. Now, the assumption they are asking, rational assumption they are asking, innovation and R&D is the only way to reduce rural and rural to urban migration. Actually, in the passage, nowhere it is said this is the only way. So I eliminated that one. Every rapidly growing country needs to minimize the divergence between productivity in agriculture and other sectors. Every rapidly growing countries. Actually, this is too much generalized here. This question in this passage, it talks, on India, or it is about India, and we can't generalize it because other case studies are not given, other examples are not given. So I eliminated that one also. Then see, inclusive innovation and R&D can help create an egalitarian society. That is something I can assume from the passage. That is something I can assume from the passage. And the fourth one, rapid urbanization takes place only when a country's economic growth is rapid. That is also an extreme statement and only is used there. So I eliminated that one and I come to the conclusion C is my answer as per my understanding of this passage. Okay. So the thing is you just apply your common sense, something can be, when there is too much generalized, the question is passage is related to a specific country or a particular nation or a particular population or a particular issue, the choices, you know, they give generalized choices, straight away you eliminate them. Sometimes the choices are totally contradictory, opposing the main idea of the passage, eliminate them. Sometimes they are too extreme, eliminate them. Okay, simple idea. Now, similar way, I took something from 2015. I don't know whether it is readable to you, but I will read it out. See the first one, the passage, human history abounds in claims and theories confining the right of governing to a few selected citizens. Exclusion of many is justified on the ground that human beings may be rightfully segregated for the good of society, viability of the political process. Now, the question is, you know, it's a beautiful question. Which one of the following statement is least essential as part of the argument in the passage? Least essential. That means you find out the idea which is contradictory to this passage. Okay. The idea you have to find out which is opposing the main idea of the passage. Okay. The least essential as part of the argument in the passage. So, something which is against the argument, something which is you know, weakens the argument in the passage, that you have to pick here. So, you see, man seeks control over external things affecting him. In society, there are super and subhuman beings. Exemptions to universal citizens participation are conducive to systemic efficacy. Governing implies recognition of disparities in individual capacities. So, certain words you see, yeah, there is you can see that yes, few select citizens, certain words, few select citizens. There is exclusion, there is another word exclusion, there is another word segregation. There is another word segregation. Okay. So, the choices matching these words of the passage, I would say, yes, there is super and subhuman beings, something which matches the argument of this passage. Exemptions to universal citizen matches the argument of the passage. Then disparities in individual capacities, that also matches the argument of the passage. So, the statement which does not match the argument of the passage is A only, man seeks control over external things affecting him. Man seeks control over external things affecting him. But in the passage they say, yes, it is to few select citizens, exclusion of many is justified on the ground, human beings may be rightfully segregated for good of society and viability of the political process. So, here the most or the least essential argument here, yes, that I would say, which is A. A is your answer. Now, coming to this next passage, yeah, many people in India feel that if we cut our defense expenditure on weapon building, we can create a climate of peace with our neighbors, subsequently reducing the conflict or creating a no-war situation. People who proclaim such ideas are either victims of war or the propagators of false argument. So, there lies the game-changing element, you know. What they say? Yes, which of the following most valid assumption? Assumption you have to pick. Assumption is, you know, something, a piece of information which conveys that the coming conclusion is true. This assumption to be true in order to become the conclusion to be true. Okay. So, in that sense, building of weapon systems by us has instigated our neighbors to wage wars against us. The greater spending on weapon building by us would lessen the possibility of armed conflict with our neighbors. It is necessary to have state-of-art weapon system for national security. Many people in India believe that we are wasting our resources on weapon building. So, actually, D is eliminated because there is no idea is conveyed in the passage which talks about people thinking of wasting of resources on weapon building. No such a wastage concept is not discussed here. Even national security system is not discussed here. So, I eliminated C and D. Now, the confusion is building of weapon systems by us has instigated our neighbors to wage wars against us. Then The greater spending on weapon building by us would lessen the possibility of armed conflict with our neighbors. In fact, B is most matching because the last line says, people who proclaim such ideas are either the victims of war or the propagators of false argument. Okay, people who say, yes, if we cut our defense expenditure on weapon building, we can create a climate of peace with our neighbors, subsequently reducing conflict or creating no war situation. But in the last line says, people who proclaim such ideas are victims of war or they are propagators of false argument. So with that statement, you know, the only conclusion we can draw from this is, that is B, the greater spending on weapon building by us would lessen the possibility of armed conflict with our neighbors. Okay. Now, there is another passage which I took from 2017. You see, what climate change will undeniably do is cause or amplify events that hasten the reduction of resources. Okay, I read the passage, but even I already told you, when you read, you know, you read the questions and come to the passage. Competition over these diminishing resources would ensue in the form of political or even violent conflict. Resources-based conflicts have rarely been overt and are thus difficult to isolate. Instead, they take on venues that appear more politically palatable. Conflicts over resources like water are often cloaked in the guise of identity or ideology. I hope you understood the passage. The question is asking for, what does it imply? What does it imply? Resource-based conflicts are always politically motivated. So the problem is, always is the word used. Resource-based conflicts are always politically motivated. But in the passage, nowhere they say, yes, competition over these diminishing resources will ensue in the form of political or even violent conflict. Resources-based conflicts have rarely been overt and difficult to isolate. Instead, they take on venues and appear more politically palatable. So, it does not mean that resource-based conflicts are always politically motivated. Always politically motivated. Such an argument is not supported here. So, I eliminated that. There are no political solutions to resolve environmental and resource-based conflicts. Environmental issues contribute to resource stress and political conflict. Political conflict based on identity or ideology cannot be resolved. So, out of B, C, D, what is the most matching choice? Can you say? The audience, can you say? Out of this B, C, D, what is the most matching choice based on your understanding? What is the central implication of the passage? I would say that I would further go for C. Environmental issues contribute to resource stresses and political conflict. Political conflict based on identity or ideology cannot be resolved. Okay. So, here that cannot be concluded from this particular or implied from this passage. So, the best option I would go for, yes, best option I will go for C, because rest of them cannot be, you know, there is no 100% like a support or backup from the passage to draw such implications, but the C is the best option, okay, based on my understanding, based on my reading. Now, coming to this next passage, during the summer in the, so there also you take care that whichever is not supported in the passage, don't ever apply your own knowledge into passage. You may have read on that, you may have good knowledge on that, information on that, doesn't matter. When you make answers, you know, make sure that that passage, piece of passage is only taken as reference, okay. Additional informations, others and you know, other sources, no needed. Whatever is there in the passage, based on that only you make the answers, okay. Coming to this one, during the summer in the Arctic Ocean, sea ice has been melting earlier and faster, and the winter freeze has been coming later. In the last 3 decades, the extent of summer ice has declined by about 30%. The lengthening period of summer melt threatens to undermine the whole Arctic food web, atop which stand polar bears. This is something the passage. They are asking for the crucial message conveyed in the passage. Yes, climate change has caused Arctic summer to be short but temperature to be high, which is totally a contradictory idea. Very simply, in the passage it says that yes, during the summer, yes, ice being melting earlier and faster, and winter freeze has been coming later. Okay. Then last 3 decades, the extent of summer ice has declined by this 30%. Lengthening of the summer melt threatens to undermine. So, here the first choice itself is contradictory to what the passage discusses. Okay, so I eliminated that one. Polar bears can be shifted to South Pole to ensure their survival. Yeah, something that can be a true idea, but the problem is this is not this is not conveyed by the piece of information. This is not drawn from the passage. I can't take this information from the passage because no hint is given in the passage regarding this shifting. Okay, without the presence of polar bear, food chains in Arctic region will disappear. That also can be a true idea, maybe a true information, true fact. But the problem is, since it is not mentioned or discussed in the passage, I cannot take it as the central idea. I can't conclude it as my idea because it is out of my reading, out of the box or out of the passage. Then see, climate change poses a threat to the survival of polar bear. That is the only suitable choice according to this passage. This is something, a crucial message conveyed by the passage out of the given choices. All ABC I eliminated because of one or other reason, but I come up with the final one. Climate change poses a threat to the survival of polar bears. Okay. So, this is the way I would say you just apply your art of elimination into choices, then you come to the answer. Okay. The choices, sometimes they are too tricky, sometimes they are extreme, sometimes they are foolish, sometimes they are contradictory, opposing the central idea of the passage. Sometimes they are too much generalized, sometimes they are too much specific, sometimes they are out of the context. So, such choices must be eliminated in order to come up with the right answer. Okay. So, take care of these aspects, and I would say solving the previous year's questions is one of the easiest solution to understand the passage trend or pattern, or what is the pattern or trend of these UPSC passages, for which I would suggest you to solve the previous year's questions, at least from 2011 or 2015 to 2022. You can solve the previous year's questions. You will exactly get an idea what kind of the keywords are being used in UPSC reading comprehension questions. Okay. So, just get the idea of the passage asked, the questions answered, just get the idea, and just get the idea of eliminating the choices, yes, to finally end with the right answers. Okay. So, that is it. Keep on practicing. All the best. And you just watch my other videos also in our YouTube channel, Gallant IAS channel. I have released many other videos to make you understand and to help you to learn the strategy of this comprehension, or it will definitely help you to learn this or maybe tackle this comprehension part of CSAT very easily. Okay. So, the very helpful videos I have done, practice sessions also I done, just to watch them. All the best. Thank you.